This man abducted two young women in the early 90s. Oh, hi there, stranger. Today I'm going to be telling you about the case of Michael Sams. Viewer discretion is advised. Extra trigger warning, the case does involve abduction and SA. Michael Benjamin Sams was born on the 11th of August 1941 in Keighley, West Yorkshire, and that is where he grew up. He joined the Merchant Navy at the age of 20, but only stayed for 3 years, later becoming a heating engineer and starting his own company. His first run-in with the law wasn't until 1978 when he stole a car and made a false insurance claim. How odd that he started his life of crime at the age of 37 by stealing a car. Whilst Sams was serving time in prison for that offence, he was diagnosed with the Big C, and that would result in the amputation of one of his legs. Once he was released from prison, he had to sell his business, but he would go on to start another one in the 1980s. And by the time he was arrested for the crimes that I'm going to tell you about, he was married to his third wife. And that brings us to July 1991, when Sams would abduct his first victim, 18-year-old Julie Dart. Julie had been working as an S-worker, and it had been from her local working area that she had been taken from. Sams blindfolded Julie and drove her to his warehouse, where he put her in a box that was chained to the floor. Julie actually did manage to escape from the box, but unfortunately was not able to get out of the room, and there was an alarm wired to the box which alerted Sams as to her attempted escape. He would return to the warehouse and secure Julie to a roof beam. She was made to write notes demanding £140,000 ransom. Sams would then take Julie's life with a hammer, and 9 days after that would dispose of her remains in a field in Lincolnshire. Many people believe that he always intended to take Julie's life, as it was highly unlikely that the £140,000 ransom could ever be paid. After the unaliving, Sams would continue to taunt police with further letters. He would say things like, quote, "It's easy to pick up S-workers, and I won't spend any more time in prison for taking the lives of 2 instead of 1. He also later told them that he had abducted another S-worker, although police found no evidence of that. All I can say is that I hope they really did look. And then around 6 months later, in January 1992, he took his second known victim. He arranged to view a property with 25-year-old estate agent Stephanie Slater, and once they were both inside, he attacked her and took her against her will. Sams again demanded a ransom. However, this time it was paid by the estate agents that Stephanie worked for, and although everybody was expecting the worst given what he had done to Julie Dart, once the ransom was paid, Sams did release Stephanie. On her first night being held captive, Stephanie was awed by Sams, but she withheld that information for a couple of years to save her own mother from further trauma. An absolutely horrendous detail of this case is that within 12 hours of being released from her traumatic circumstance, Stephanie Slater was made to give a press conference while she was still unwillingly intoxicated and obviously traumatized. As if that poor lady hadn't been through enough. Who made that call? Now, although Stephanie had been released, police were still looking for the perpetrator and did not know who it was. And so they made an appeal to Crime Watch, the television programme. And during that appeal, they played a recording of Sam's voice. His first wife just happened to be watching Crime Watch that night and recognised the voice and made the telephone call. Praise her. Sams was arrested, and he did admit to the abduction of Stephanie Slater. However, he denied having anything to do with the abduction and subsequent unaliving of Julie Dart. And so it was up to forensics and physical evidence. But remember, this is the early 90s. But hats off to whatever forensics team worked this case, as they did a fantastic job. They recovered a fibre from Julie Dart's remains that matched fibres from Sam's warehouse in Newark, and they also managed to recover tiny microscopic droplets of human red bodily fluid that matched Julie Dart. You know we love us some physical evidence. On the 8th of July 1993, almost 2 years to the day of her abduction and unaliving, Michael Sams was found guilty by jury of those two offences and also of the abduction of Stephanie Slater. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and the judge did not recommend a minimum term. Just 3 days after his conviction, Sams would confess to the unaliving of Julie Dart. He said he did so because he thought it was only fair on her mother. Stephanie Slater did not return to work as an estate agent, instead relocating to the Isle of Wight, where she worked with police forces, advising them on how to deal with kidnap survivors and working with the survivors themselves. As for Michael Sams, the two abductions that I've told you about are not the only crimes that he committed during that time frame. He was also blackmailing supermarkets, threatening to poison food. He threatened to cause a railway disaster. He was trying to extort money out of any big corporation that he could think of, or so it would seem. And so when he was sentenced for the unaliving and the two abductions, he was also sentenced on 4 counts of blackmail against the police and British Rail, and he was given 10 years for each of those 4 counts. 2 years after he was imprisoned, he attacked a female probation worker. For that attack, he received another 8 years on top of his sentence. He was back in the news again when he sued the prison system for losing his artificial leg. I'm not laughing at that. Well, I kind of am, because when I read that, I was like, how the hell did they lose it? How many of those things have you got lying around? But it was during the course of a transfer, which just gave me more questions, like, why wasn't he wearing it? And how did he not notice it was gone? Either way, he was awarded £4,000 in damages, which a lot of people were unhappy about, and to be honest with you, I can understand why. Although on the flip side of that coin, it's very naughty of the prison to be losing artificial limbs. Come on, guys. It's not a set of car keys, you know? He tried to sue them another couple of times as well, but that didn't go anywhere. Michael Sams also tried to sue Stephanie Slater, the second woman that he had abducted, because she wrote a book about her experience, and in that book she detailed the he had committed on her on the first night of her captivity. Sams tried to say that the two had had a consensual relationship. He lost the case, but honestly, I was horrified that he was even allowed to file to begin with. There should be some sort of protective law in place for victims like Stephanie, because Michael Sams is still serving out his prison term. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't passed away. So he's been inside for 32 years and is around 84 years old. Now you're the one in captivity, Michael. And that is the horrible case of Michael Sams. There was a lot more to this as well. It was a little bit mad, I'm not going to lie, but I wanted to focus on what I'm telling you about. As ever, rest in peace to the victim of this case, Julie Dart. And I'm glad that Stephanie Slater got away and went on to have a happy life. And you, stranger, of course, if you've stayed with me up until now, then thank you for watching, and I will see you for the next one.